Propulsion.
There's an ancient legend, Perry Smith, KHTS news director, that space is indeed the final frontier. Is that right?
I think so.
And here to talk about it, we have some people from JPL who live in the area, but they work on some very, very, very important projects with regard to NASA and that things such as space being the final frontier.
Yeah, I want to thank Jane Platt and Dennis Young for coming into the studio with us today. And I was talking to Jane a while back, and she had told me that 440 people who work in the Jet Propulsion's lab that help us get, in outer space, live here in the Santa Clarita Valley. I don't know what the percentage is, but that's got to be a pretty high number. And Dennis, thank you for coming down here and taking some time to talk to us a little bit about what you do for the Jet Propulsion's lab.
Well, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so how did you get involved in rocket science, as it were, and in that field? I was looking at it. You have a degree. You have a degree in Spanish, and you have a degree in international business. And so how rocket science?
It's the passion. It
Oh,
really
really?
is. It's
Okay.
the passion. It started out as a little boy, and what little boy doesn't want to grow up to be either a firefighter or an astronaut? And I wanted to be an astronaut. And I was just fascinated by science. And in high school, my favorite class was physics. I really enjoyed it. Thoroughly.
So calculus is where they lost me. So journalism was the logical route. Luckily,
Calculus
there
does
are
not
other
discriminate,
options.
does it?
Algebra 1 for me, and because I'm an
if I'm
AM
being
radio
honest,
DJ.
geometry, but thanks.
Yeah. Don't get me started on geometry.
But so yeah, talk to me a little bit about how did you get involved? What was the route you took that brought you to JPL?
Well, it was partly sheer luck, but somebody corrected me somewhere down the line. They said, no, because if you're passionate about something and you're interested in something, you're just naturally going to follow that. So whether that energy is positive or negative, you're going to follow that energy. And I was always interested in space travel. And every time I drove by JPL on the 210 freeway, I would slow down and look in awe of just like, oh my gosh, there's cool stuff going on here.
Right.
Little did I know that later on I would end up working there.
And speaking of which, there's a lot of, I don't think there's probably ever a dull time for JPL, but now especially exciting where the Curiosity mission, and you were involved in that as the lead resource analyst for the Curiosity. Tell me a little bit about that. What was that experience like, and just being a part of something so, groundbreaking and cool?
I'm pinching myself right now, and it's not the air conditioning that's giving me the goosebumps. It's
cool.
It's just a neat job. I just wonder. I had this. I'll explain it this way. My son, when he was in school, he's my oldest, and they had some career day where the parents come and talk about what you do for a living. And my son came home and said, "I want to be a firefighter, Dad." I'm like, why? He goes, "Oh, so and so's dad's a firefighter, and I want to be a fighter. He has the coolest job. His job's way cooler than you." And I said, "Oh, really?" Oh, really? So I basically told the teacher, I can't come in during career week, but I'm going to knock your socks off. And I brought a little Mars rover in with me. Cool. And it was just really cool. And it's just things like that you get to do at JPL that's just so out of the norm. And, of course, no good deed goes unpunished. So after doing this for these kids in this classroom, I heard that's not fair. What about my kid? My kid didn't get to see the Mars rover. He's in the same school. Why she didn't get to go see it? So I said, you're right. So I brought the Mars rover back to Santa Clarita Elementary, and I did the whole school.
Cool.
550 kids.
I'm about to tell you right now, it's not fair that I don't get to see the Mars rover. Just so you know.
George is a little sad.
You have no room in your studio here. I'd love to bring it to you, but you have no room.
How big is the actual Mars rover, for just put it in context for people
The
who might
one
not
on
know?
Mars or the one that I bring to the schools?
Both.
Okay, so the one on Mars is, I guess the best analogy is it's got the body of a Mini Cooper and the wheelbase of a Humvee. It is a large vehicle. And if you get the chance to watch the YouTube video of the landing, it's just incredible. Just the series of steps that we had to go through. And this is not somebody on a joystick. I mean, people think, hey, you got a bunch you got a bunch of nerds sitting on the other side, and they've got joysticks and buttons and woohoo. And no, because there's at least an 8 to 20 minute delay moving at the speed of light. So when you look up at the night sky and you see Mars up there twinkling away, that light is anywhere between 8 to 20 minutes old, and that's going in one direction. So what we had to do is program everything well in advance, and we had what's called the 7 minutes of terror. And I remember that night. It's just, I will go to my grave, and that's one of those things I will remember very clearly. The 7 minutes of terror on August 5th. And as I was watching NASA TV, and we were getting these live broadcasts, and I realized at a certain point when they said we've entered the atmosphere, it's already happened. all the news that we're getting is at least 8 minutes old. So it's either a hunk of junk on the surface of another planet, or we have an incredible success in robotic space exploration, which of course it turned out to be the latter.
Right. And once you get on there, is that the hardest part of the job, like actually landing a craft like that on a foreign plane? I mean, or is it then once it's there you have like the real mission begins, or?
Well, the real mission begins once you've landed, but landing is actually the biggest challenge. And I have a slide in one of my presentations that shows a scoreboard if, planet Earth versus planet Mars. And planet Mars is way ahead. I think twice the missions have failed that have succeeded.
Really?
And JPL has actually been the institution that has been by far the most successful in successfully landing on Mars. It's a tricky planet to land on.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Well, and again, we talk about you have to plan in advance for the gravitational pull, the rotation of, I was going to say the Earth, but the rotation of the planet itself, and really, and having that amount of time, that is pretty amazing what you guys do. And I think that's really important, especially for kids who don't like to do math but think they want to be astronauts or even work in this. It's all math. That's all planning ahead. It's not something, I mean, yeah, you're using computer help, but it starts with that brain power.
I'll confess a little secret on the radio here. And this is for all the kids and all the parents out there who say, I'm not good at math. I could never do that. And I was a C student in math most of my time in school because I was one of those kids that would look at math, and I would say, why am I doing this? Where will I ever need to know polynomials? Why do people need to know that opposite angles are always equal? And what happened is once you get into physics and you start applying the math, then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and you're like, uh-huh. And what really got me turned on to math was when I took a finance course. And then all of a sudden, I like money. I like having money in my wallet. I like having money in my bank account. I don't like owing money. Right. And all of a sudden, I had a very strong self-motivation to learn math. And the more I learned, the easier it got. And then, of course, computers help tremendously. Right. You can double-check your work in Excel, and off you go.
Exactly.
There is hope.
So, and on the Curiosity, of course, just to be clear, that's the Mars mission. That's is it the most recent mission that you've launched?
It's the most recent Rover mission,
right.
Yes.
Okay. And what's in the future for JPL or for that type of exploration? Are we ever going to get people on Mars, or is that in the works?
Oh boy, there's the big question. So let me answer the first part of your question, which is the next mission. The next Rover mission is currently called Mars 2020. 2020 is when we launch, and basically we can only launch once every 2 years, and that is because of the rotation of the planets. And as I explain it to kids, imagine you're on planet Earth and your twin brother, twin sister is on planet Mars. For every Christmas you get here on Earth, your twin has to wait 2 years to celebrate Christmas. And that is because of the rotation of the planets. We can do nothing. Congress can do nothing to change that. That rotation, that orbit is set in stone, if you would. So we have that small window of time to launch, and it's every 2 years. So Mars 2020 will be the next rover. It looks very similar to the Curiosity rover, but its mission is slightly different. Our mission, our prime objective, was to determine whether life could have existed on the surface of Mars. Not did it, but could it have existed on the surface of Mars? Because you have to answer that question before you start looking for signs of life. So the next rover will hopefully get us a little bit closer in that direction. But we're also going to have a lot of other missions that are more satellites. I think we're going to have another lander. Mars is a mysterious planet. It's very similar to Earth, but yet different. One of the mysteries of Mars is it used to have running water, but what happened? It used to have a thicker atmosphere, but now it's 100 times thinner than Earth's. It might have had a magnetic shield or field around it. And Earth has a very strong magnetic field, and that protects us from an awful lot of stuff. Space is a dangerous place. It's very dangerous.
Dennis Young from JPL, thank you so much for stopping by. Very, very fascinating. And as Santa Clarita resident, we want to have you back and talk more about this stuff, but time has escaped us. We are going to be coming to the top of the hour, and I got to get to some quick traffic. So thank you so much for stopping by. Very, very fascinating.